of manna from heaven and supplied the water from the rock. All the things that we said in Dayenu, God, if you had done just this, we are grateful. Melito is saying, you Jews, you never expressed gratitude for any of these things. So what's going on over here? You got to remember, a lot of the Pesach Seder was formulated at the time that Christianity was first breaking away from Judaism. And so the Hebrew Christians were rewriting the Seder to fit their needs. And we're going to see exactly what that means in a minute. So, did we write the Dayenu to answer Melito? Or did Melito write his song to answer the Dayenu? We can't be sure. What we can be sure is that there are aspects of the Pesach Seder that are there in response to Christianity. And let me give you the most powerful example of that, where we now come to a very important statement. And we have it on page 55. Rabbi Gamliel says, whoever does not speak of the following three things on Pesach has not fulfilled his duty: the Pesach sacrifice, matzah, and maror. Now that's a very important, powerful statement. We have that in no other holiday. Rabbi Gamliel said, whoever doesn't talk about the shofar and Rosh Hashanah hasn't fulfilled his obligation. Whoever doesn't talk about the sukkah and the lulav and esrog on sukkahs hasn't fulfilled his obligation. We only get it now in terms of these three things. If you haven't spoken about these three things, you haven't fulfilled your obligation. Lots of theories, again, why he said this. But it's interesting to note, Rabbi Gamliel was one of our leading rabbis at the time this split between Judaism and Christianity was taking place. And the early Christians were taking the Passover symbols and using them for their needs. Jesus became the paschal sacrifice. His suffering became the bitter experience, and the holes in the matzah represented the holes of the cross. That's how they were interpreting it. We say we have three matzahs because one is for the Kohen, and one is for a Levi, and one for an Israelite. The Christians in their Seder say three matzahs, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And so Rabbi Gamliel is saying, you gotta make sure you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So you got to know Pesach is a paschal sacrifice. And what was the paschal sacrifice? They used to sacrifice a lamb. They ate it together, several families, and this became the meal. The Passover meal was a fantastic meal. What did they eat on Pesach? At the Pesach Seder, they had roasted lamb, put on a piece of matzah with some herbs. Beautiful. This wasn't the first sandwich. This was the first hors d'oeuvres in history. So the Pesach was the paschal sacrifice. We no longer have the sacrifice, although you should know there were rabbis who said that we should have the sacrifice. Now that we have the land of Israel, we should do it in the spot of the temple. Obviously, that's not a very popular move, but it's the kind of thing that Israel would wait to announce for when President Obama comes. That might be the time they'll announce, this year we're going to offer some sacrifices up on the Temple Mount. The same guy who made the other announcement about the buildings might pull the same thing over here. That's the Zeroah, the shank bone, to remind us of that sacrifice. Matzah. There's so much to say about matzah. It seems hard to believe that there's so much to say about matzah. This is matzah that each and every one of you should have at your Pesach Seder. This is handmade matzah. You can buy it at 7 Mile. You can buy it at Perns or Shopsies or wherever. And what it is it is handmade, and traditionally it is made round. See, this box has 3 for the Pesach Seder. Originally it was made soft and thick. It basically pita bread. And Sephardic Jews still have something like that. Then we started making it harder and ground, and then came the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution came up with this great idea of making matzah by machine. You have no idea the battle that took place over that. Separating rabbis, separating families, separating communities, on whether it's legal or not to make it by machine. And one of the opposition reasons was that people are going to lose their jobs, which was really something very nice. But with the Industrial Revolution, and I'm mentioning this in one of my Pesach sermons, more and more Jews, more and more people were moving to the cities, so it wasn't enough to just have this little bakery to make the matzahs. We had to start making it on a more massive basis. And along came a man named Mr. Manischewitz, not the one who taught in our school, but the one who developed 50 patents, most of which were used to make machine-made matzahs. And today machine-made matzahs are accepted by all Jews. But at the Pesach Seder, we still have the tradition of using the handmade matzahs. But you should know something. There are some Jews who will only use machine-made matzahs because they say there's less of a possibility of it being chametz than the handmade. Yes? Shmura. Because the wheat was watched from the moment it was cut. This is shmura matzah. Okay, that tells you something about the matzah. There are different interpretations of what the matzah represents. Does it represent the bread we ate in freedom? Some say it represents the bread that we ate for 200 years in Egypt. Lots of different traditions, but matzah obviously is the symbol of the holiday. And now you can buy things made, they have matzah pizza to commemorate the exodus of the Jews from Sicily. You can get anything now. And then comes maror, the bitter herb, to remember the bitter experience. There are lots of different traditions of what to use for the bitter herb, and I have them all listed here, but for our purposes, you should know the following. In all probability, the most acceptable thing to use for the bitter herb is romaine lettuce. Because romaine lettuce has a quality to it. You start off chewing it and it's sweet, and then it becomes bitter, and that reminds us of the Egyptian experience. First it started off sweet, and then things turned bitter. So why don't all Jews use romaine lettuce? Because there was no fresh fields in Hungary and in Poland. There was no Whole Foods in central Warsaw. And they couldn't get romaine lettuce. So we started using maror, the bitter herb, the horseradish. It should be grated horseradish. It should not be commercially prepared. Not for the Pesach Seder. It should be grated horseradish because that's really commemorating the experience. Pesach, matzah, and maror. Then we thank God for all the good that has come into our lives because that's an important aspect of the Seder. We sing songs of praise to God and we do the Hallel. And then, finally, after years of suffering through the Pesach Seder, we are ready to eat. Now, when it comes time to eat, we open up our agadas now, we go and wash our hands, there is no talking, and we recite the blessing on the matzah. 2 blessings, one hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and one specifically for this mitzvah of al achilat matzah, of eating the matzah. We lean and we eat the matzah. And not just a little nibble. I'm not telling you have to eat a whole matzah. But you have to eat a substantial amount to fulfill this mitzvah of the matzah. And then we come to the maror. The maror we take and we dip it in charoses. Now, charoses is the most distinctly Jewish food. Anything else you mention, you could say some other people eat it also. even gefilte fish. There's different kinds of fish. Today's Wall Street Journal, the feature article was on shawarma. You know, we think because it's served in Israel, it's an Israeli food. And there was a lot of shawarma long before Israel, and a lot of American soldiers ate shawarma, which is sliced lamb rolled into a piece of pita. They ate it when they were in Iraq, and now they're opening up these shawarma stands in American army bases in the United States, which really should give us a good sense of security, knowing this. Be that as it may, charoses, nobody else made charoses. Now, there's lots, those of you who aren't familiar with charoses, it's our version of silly putty. All right? It's made with apples and sometimes with nuts and sometimes with wine, and I list for you all of the reasons why we use the charoses. What's important for you to know is we don't eat the charoses. We dip the bitter herb into the charoses, just to get a little taste of that charoset, or according to some rabbis, because the charoset is going to kill any deadly bugs or germs in the bitter herb. But we don't want to make the maror too sweet. So then we eat the maror, we don't lean, and then we have what many have called the first sandwich in history, and that is Hillel's Korech sandwich. What was Hillel all about? If you read the Torah, it's hard to tell whether you're supposed to be eating matzah and maror and the Paschal sacrifice together or separately. Some say you're supposed to eat it separately, each one, which is what we do. And some say you're supposed to eat it all together as one, which is what we also do, because we're not 100% sure of who's right. There's an important lesson there. Sometimes no one's right, or sometimes everyone's right. So, to meet both needs, first we eat them separately, then we eat it together. After that, although it's not in the Haggadah, we have a tradition of taking a hard-boiled egg and eating it. Why do we do that? Look at you guys. I mean, you could be sitting at your Pesach Seder, and you're eating a you're not eating a hard-boiled egg. No, I got it. And the hard-boiled egg, somebody asks, why are we eating a hard-boiled egg? And you're going to have to turn to your kid to find out. Some say it's a sign of spring fertility. Remember, Easter also has this association with eggs. But others say it's a symbol of Jewish survival. The harder we get. Some also say that it symbolizes the circle of life. And in fact, we do serve eggs in a house of mourning. But I want to just show you something really nice on your next to last page. There is a cycle to the Jewish year that comes by way of Pesach. Every day of Pesach tells us something about when another Jewish holiday is going to take place. Look how this works. First day of Pesach, that's an aleph, is matched by the last letter, the tuf. If the first day of Pesach comes on a Sunday, then tuf, Tisha B'Av, is going to be on a Sunday that year. Whatever day the first day of Pesach falls on. This year, when's the first day of Pesach? Tuesday. So if somebody says to you, when's Tisha B'Av? Tell them this year it's going to be on Tuesday. The aleph, the first letter, matches the tuf, the last letter. Next, second, the beis. If the second day of Pesach following this chart comes out on a Monday, then shin, the second letter from the end, Shavuos, is going to come out on a Monday. Third letter, The Gimel. If Pesach comes out on a Tuesday, then the third letter from the end, Rosh Hashanah, is going to be on a Tuesday. Fourth letter, Daled, Wednesday, then Kuf. The fourth letter from the end is going to be Kriyat HaTorah. Simchas Torah is going to come out on a Wednesday. Fifth, the Hey, if it comes out on a Thursday, it's going to match the Tzaddik, which is Tzom Kippur, the fast of Kippur. Sixth, if the sixth day comes out on a Friday, then then Purim, the Pei, is going to come out on a Friday. This is what we have in the code that tells us this. But there's 7 days to Pesach. And we didn't have anything that matched the seventh day. And lo and behold, in 1948, the state of Israel was reborn, and it was reborn on Hey Iyar, the 5th day of Iyar. And lo and behold, every year, whatever day the 7th day of Pesach comes out on, the ayin, the 7th from the end, that's the day that Yom HaAtzmaut is going to fall on. Does this prove there's a God in this world? But it's nice. It's nice, and it fits, and it works. And for hundreds of years, there was no match-up for that 7th day. And in our time, we got the match, and it works out to be on the 7th day. Then we hit the Afikomen. We hopefully find the Afikomen. And what is the Afikomen? Many different interpretations of what the Afikomen is, but really it's a means of ending the party part of the Seder. We eat some matzah. Originally, in all probability, it wasn't matzah that we ate. We ate a little piece of the korban Pesach, the Paschal sacrifice. We don't have that anymore. We eat a little bit of the matzah, and you're not supposed to eat after that. There's no eating after that. Then comes the Birkat Hamazon. Then comes songs of praise to God. And then comes a series of songs. You all know the songs, the Echad Meodea, the Chad Gadya. Those songs were really added much later on just to give us a sense of joy and to share in the Seder experience for as long as we can. Any questions? This is what I usually get at my Pesach Seder. Yeah. It's usually at this point that Andrew takes a walk, goes, gets a drink, lies down on the couch. We never hear from him again. Jonathan is juggling the balls that we had for the lice, and I've lost the crowd. So if it happens to you, you should know it happened. I lost the crowd earlier. You can't do it all at a Pesach Seder. But if you can get a couple of these points across, if you prepare and say, this is what I'm going to try and get across tonight, this idea, then you can make each Pesach Seder an experience. Yeah?
You mentioned, when you talk about eating the matzah, there's a certain amount that, don't eat. I've heard when you're eating